Hello everyone, carrying on from where I was before. Sorry, it cut out because the memory was full. But anyway, I'm talking about ending this Russo-Ukrainian conflict. Putin said that he's amenable to compromise. So is his Ukrainian analog Volodymyr Zelensky. And why is Putin willing to make more concessions? I mean, perhaps he demanded more than he was willing to settle for, just to have a really extreme negotiating position and whittle it down to something he thinks the other side might agree to. And pressure's mounting on Putin. Only minutes ago, President Biden announced that the United States is going to completely prohibit all imports of Russian coal, gas, and oil. So Russia doesn't sell that much hydrocarbons to the United States, but it's dealing their economy yet another blow. The United Kingdom might follow suit, buys only 3% of its energy from Russia. European Union countries buy about 30%. Obviously, in somewhere like Portugal, it's very low. Somewhere like Finland is very high, or Hungary, because they're closer to Russia. So European Union countries, they're spending $300 million a day on Russian energy. And as Biden says, that is actually funding Putin's war machine. So they're no longer going to subsidize this aggression. But Brent crude has gone up to $130 a barrel. It might go even higher. So that's the thing about sanctions. By hurting the other side, you also hurt yourself. Now, Russia might order some counter sanctions, as in refusing to buy various Western goods, but loads of Western companies have either reduced their activities in the Russian Federation or terminated them altogether. About 250 companies have done that, and other companies which are still trading with Russia are under pressure to do so. Some Russian companies, in order to evade sanctions, have shifted their operations to Armenia, but no doubt Armenia will come under pressure of sanctions. Obviously, Armenia is almost entirely economically reliant on Russia. They wouldn't survive if it wasn't for Russian military guarantees, so can't blame them for doing what they have to survive. So the UK government says they're going to phase out imports of Russian oil by the end of the year. So Putin is more willing to compromise because things are going badly for him. US intelligence estimates there's about 3,000 Russian casualties, which is far lower than the Ukrainians are claiming. They're claiming something about 12,000. But no casualties, that's killed, wounded, or captured. And now Putin, he just said yesterday that he shan't use any conscripts or indeed reservists in this conflict. Well, that's another blatant lie, because he's already using conscripts. Enough of them have been captured and questioned, and I don't think they're actors. I don't think they've hoaxed it. You know, if a very senior commander has been captured and has publicly denounced it on television, that guy really doesn't want to be returned to Russia, because refoulement would result in his execution, no doubt. I'd feel sorry for those poor privates who told more than their name, rank, and number, because they may get a severe punishment if they're sent back to the Russian Federation. And like Stalin, that might be one of his conditions for peace, is you've got to give me back those prisoners of war. And you shouldn't have surrendered, you should have fought to the death. Anyway, 1.5 million Ukrainian refugees have fled. About 1 million are in Poland, more yet to come. I mean, about 10 million can't flee because they're military-age males. Some people are pro-Russian, that's like at least 5 million, they're going to stay. Some people are geriatrics, are just very ill, the bed-bound, they can't flee. But, you know, easily 20 million people could go to Western European countries, or further afield, the United States, for example. So, Putin, he's open to compromise, partly because it's going badly, it's really wrecking his economy. Various Russian billionaires, Alexei Mordashov, Oleg Deripaska, have come out saying they'd like to see the war ended. And perhaps China is leaning on them, saying, you know, you're playing havoc with the world economy, oil and gas prices are sky high, you're hurting Western economies, they can't purchase so many of our manufactures, you've got to reduce this conflict, end this conflict, you know, de-escalate if you can't end it altogether. Even corn from Ukraine, they can't get that. So it's hurting the global economy. So that's why Russia might have to end it sooner than they wanted to. But, you know, what if all the males are pro-Russia, are forced to fight? Good question. Then they might mutiny, they might go over to the other side. That's one of the problems with conscription. People are not really motivated. So Russia could call up reservists, and they have a military of something like 3.5 million troops. Against Ukraine's maximum with reservists of about 1 million. But the one thing is, Russia can't even provide the logistics for 200,000. How are they going to do it for 3.5 million? They can't bring all that force to bear on Ukraine, and they've got huge frontiers to guard. So Russia's vast dimensions are both a strength and a weakness. And, you know, Georgia could be decided to attack them, or Moldova. I think not. There could be US naval maneuvers off their coast to keep them distracted, something like that. Russia's darkly threatening Finland not to join NATO. If Finland did, well, Russia couldn't do anything about it right now. So we see how poorly performed. But as I say, as the weeks go on, I think things are going to turn in Russia's favour a bit more when they can drive off-road in their vehicles. They finally sort out the logistic problems, things like that. And they're going to start capturing more cities. They're just bludgeoning them into capitulation. I mean, they don't have those... what's the word? They don't have those guided missiles or smart bombs or things like that because they're too expensive. So they will just blow up every single building there is. They'll just reduce the city to rubble. And having pulverized it, they'll take it as they did in Chechnya, they did in Aleppo, and so on. These are slow but sure victories. Anyway, so Putin, I mean, I don't think he's going to invade Finland, but Stalin had killed a lot of his top generals, so Putin hasn't done that yet. So the Russians are going to have to do a lot of head scratching, a lot of soul searching, and learn some lessons for this conflict's gone quite badly. But Zelensky's seems to be open to compromise because his people are suffering so much. But do NATO countries want Ukraine to compromise? They might sense the war is going quite well. This is an unmissable opportunity to teach Russia a very bloody lesson. They've shipped all these weapons to Ukraine, would like to see them used. And if you're a Ukrainian, can you trust perfidious Putin? I think not. You know he'll break the treaty as soon as he can get away with it. He's broken every single treaty he's ever signed. So he will break a treaty unless he absolutely has to abide by it. So this is a real humiliation for him. I think it's just some sort of tactic. And one thing about artillery is they say it's psychological as much as physical. Just, I was told by one of my teachers who've been in the parachute regiment of the British Army, it's about breaking the enemy's will to fight. They can't sleep and so on. It really just shreds their nerves. So often they have post-traumatic stress disorder, even if they're not physically injured. Is that it? That's it. Is it run out again? Okay, I thought there's this silly thing flashed up on the screen. So the conflict is going on. So although things will get better for Russia in some ways, the economic situation is going to get worse because yes, they've lost a huge amount of their economy. Yes, the ruble has lost a huge amount of value, but they're only beginning to feel the pinch of food prices going up, of them having to restrict how much people can buy to try and crack down on black marketeering, and that pressure is going to mount and mount. Already over 8,000 anti-war protesters have been arrested in Russia. These are valiant warriors for peace. People are taking serious risks to do the right thing, and being beaten up in a police station is absolutely standard for non-violent protesters. You have a black mark against your name forever, being accused of being a fascist, as though a fascist would ever oppose his country's war of aggression. As there's more economic hardship, I think more people are going to dare to do that and just be driven to do that by sheer desperation. It's having a deleterious impact on the economies of Central Asia. Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan are heavily reliant on remittances from Gastarbeitern in Russia. Obviously Armenia, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, they also send significant number of guest workers to Russia. A lot of them lost their jobs 2 years ago in the pandemic, still haven't regained them. Some of the ones there, they're the last to be hired, they're the first to be fired. So it's going to damage their economies as well. They might be pleading Putin to end the war early. So things are getting worse and worse for him. He's only got one firm ally, Belarus, and the Belarusians claim not to even be fighting in Ukraine. So there are grim things happening for him. On the other hand, are these weapons shipments to Ukraine finally going to pay off? Their sniper took out a Russian general the other day, something that Russia hasn't actually denied. They might start destroying more planes. Anyway, so we'll see how it pans out. It could end within a week, but I think not. I think it'll go on for a few months. I think NATO might be saying, no, please keep going, Ukrainians, because we're going to arm you, and this is going so well. And we've got the Russians bogged down. We're really going to hurt them very badly indeed. Of course, I would like peace, but they say peace at what price? Peace with justice and so on. And it's very rare that one side gets 100% of what it wants and the other gets none. But even if war were ended now, there's already been so much destruction, so many houses destroyed, and who's going to pay for it? I'm sure Putin will refuse to pay a penny piece towards all this destruction he's wrought totally unnecessarily. That's enough from me. Toodaloo.